Hey there, and welcome back to another Miraculous Ladybug video, and today we have to talk about Adrian Agreste, aka Cat Noir. Cat Noir is without a doubt, at least from what I've seen online within the fandom, probably the most popular character in the franchise. Overall, if you include all the fans, so everybody who watches, not just those who go trolling on social media, making posts and theories and contributing to discussion threads, so in the eyes of the overall fandom, it's pretty clear that Marinette, aka Ladybug, is the most popular character, and that's by design. She's front and center on everything, so of course she's going to get massively popular compared to anybody else, and there's no shame in that. But in the more passionate and hardcore sectors of the fan base, I feel like there's a huge amount of love for Cat Noir. He's tremendously popular. And with that popularity comes the salt. My god, there's a lot of salt to be had. And all of it, really it surrounds the fact that in the eyes of these fans, he is one of the most poorly written, or maybe strangely written characters on the show. They think he's been shafted by the narrative. And when you look at it on the face of things, they do have a point. It got to the point of ridiculousness by the end of Season 5. His character was a shambles, and honestly a massive joke, for God's sake. I think it's clear to everybody that Adrian Agreste, at the end of the day, was well and truly wrecked by the writing. And it wasn't just some epic flop or fail, like they tried to do something ambitious with his character and it ended up not working out. No, it feels like at every single turn, the writers made every single decision possible that were new to his character and make him seem like the most pathetic loser of a character ever. Just take a look at the ending of Season 5, where he sits out the final battle and literally lays on the floor of his jail cell, crying, whilst Ladybug's out there whooping villain ass and going toe-to-toe with Monarch and getting all the big moments. Not to mention Monarch is Adrian's dad, and they're fighting a battle that will decide the fate of the world. But Adrian's just laying there, crying. And it's got to the point that it did actually get to me. It changed the way I perceived his character overall, and I'd start to think to myself, why is this guy even popular? Is it just that people like the underdog? How does this wet blanket, this absolute dweeb of a character, have any fans at all? I really did find it rather astounding, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, because it feels like for seasons at a time he was presented as completely and utterly pathetic. And so retroactively it warped my mind to make me feel like he was always this way. And so when I watched something like the movie from last year, where he was always a bit different, especially in his Adrian form, it made me do a double take. And then it happened again as I was finishing off my rewatch of Season 1 for my retrospective reviews. I was seeing Adrian and thinking to myself, why is he cooler? Why is he sassy? Why is he being helpful in battles? What's going on? And then it hit me like an oncoming freight train. That complete feeling of, look how they massacred my boy. Because, well, yeah, it's so obvious, isn't it? You can't make a character that popular like he is in the current fandom, and yet have him be presented as a dweeb at every turn. At some point, he had to be awesome. Otherwise, you're just making a hero who's going to be widely disliked by everybody, because incompetence is annoying on screen for many, after all. So obviously, at one point, he had to go from Ladybug and Cat Noir in the vein of Batman and Robin, where Batman is clearly the main hero, but Robin is still important and popular too, to Tom and Jerry, where one is presented as the main hero who always wins, and the other is a bumbling fool there to look like an idiot. And by doing so, makes the main hero look even more impressive. That's the story progression we've seen. And like I said, I didn't really notice it all that much until I did a recent rewatch of the last couple of episodes of Season 1. Season 1 of any show can be a bit interesting to say the least. Often the personalities, backstories, and dynamics of the various different characters, they've not always been fully nailed down. And so you often end up with a bit of early installment weirdness at times. And Miraculous was no stranger to that. And I guess you could argue that Adrian has been a victim. Is victim the right word? Victim? An example of early season weirdness. In Season 1 especially, he's far, far different to the weeping wimp that he'd later become. He was charismatic, adventurous, rather sassy at times. There are numerous examples of him taking characters like Chloe down a peg when they're being a bully. I think a notable example of this happened in Kung Fu, I think it was. And when it happened, it felt like it came completely out of the blue to me. He was a stronger character, more willing to go against his father, more willing to disobey his wishes. And whilst he would eventually get beaten down with words, just had a different vibe to it overall, and that extends to his character as Cat Noir, not just as Adrian. Because whilst Adrian felt more self-assured, a stronger person with a cheeky undercurrent, Cat Noir enhanced those characteristics. Season 1 Cat Noir, before he confesses his love to Ladybug and gets rejected, is truly the peak of his character. Seriously, the dude gets shot down and instantly there was no coming back. It was all downhill slowly from that point onwards. Sad to see. Honestly, kind of real to life for some men. And it's a shame because season 1 Cat Noir actually gets shit done. Like, don't get me wrong, the season 1 dynamic is very much Batman and Robin. They're not equal partners, but they're presented that way in the story. They acknowledge each other as partners, but we're more talking about how they're treated by the narrative in terms of their successes in battle and whatnot. I think the joke is at this point that by the end of season 5, Cat Noir is completely useless, unable to do anything on his own. He gets beaten by every villain before they're defeated by Ladybug, and his character is ultimately not considered to be integral to the plot other than being motivation and as a love interest. And that's not very compelling, is it? Sometimes he might get a moment here and there where he's important to the story, as in his choices and actions are important, rather than him just being a plot device that Gabe and Marinette base their choices on. And sometimes he'd get moments of badassery as Cat Noir. But by the end, they are few and far between. But season 1 Cat Noir just hits different in that way, you know? There he is, he's whooping villains, he's regularly being part of the finishing moves that Marinette concocts, he's not being wildly creepy and pushy to the point he needs a consent workshop, he's not acting like a nice guy when Ladybug continues to show no romantic interest in him. You know how it goes. Seriously, the number of times I was sitting there expecting him to get his shit kicked in and then he just doesn't was truly astounding. But then, like I said, we get that slow and steady decline of his character, and it really does go so slowly. It's hard to notice at first, but slowly but surely, we see that gap between him and Ladybug start to drift in, as she becomes far more important overall to the storylines, being the one who does all the more plot-heavy stuff in regards to the Miraculouses. She meets Fu, she learns about the Miraculouses, the Kwami, she becomes the guardian of the box. She knows all the identities of the different side heroes. She can wield all the Miraculouses at once because she's so strong. She gives out all the Miraculouses to the other heroes. She chooses who she needs. She mixes and matches as she goes. She's the team leader. Whilst Adrian's another face in the crowd. But hey, plot relevance isn't everything, right? He still has his charisma, his charm, and his cheeky personality. Oh no. They're going to remove that too. Okay. And they'll start to push this desperate and pathetic vibe that Cat Noir had towards Ladybug from like season 2. I think it starts at the end of Glaciator, or during that episode, all the way to like season 4 maybe. Hell, I think maybe even a little bit in season 5. I can't quite recall. But it lasts for a very long time. And alongside that, his story with his dad over time lost the nuance of him being lonely and wanting his dad to love and care about him to simply being his dad raging at him at every opportunity. The nuance of this story was lost, and he just out and out becomes an abuse victim. Which, I don't know, it's not what I'm looking for in my goofy cartoons, you see? I kind of want him to have a bit more fire. On top of that, in battles, he no longer mattered much at all, and increasingly, through seasons 2, 3, and 4, he became a joke. He was there to take the L from the villains, which in turn is meant to make that villain look strong so Ladybug can overcome the odds and win. My god, it really did happen a lot during season 4, especially if memory serves. That was when the is Cat Noir being ruined / underutilized / whatever type of discourse really started to hit a fever pitch, and we had those really infamous posts from Asterix where he talked about how Miraculous is oriented towards young girls and therefore male characters don't matter, which was certainly some sort of logic, I guess. I gotta love when Asterix unleashes, honestly. It's truly classic. But yeah, pretty much this character became stuck in this cycle. He became a punching bag for Dad, he was lusted after by Marinette and all her rivals, and then he was being creepy on main as Cat Noir. He got slapped around a bit, rinse, repeat, and that's the status quo by the end of season 4. Hell, even for a huge part of season 4, it actually felt like Alia had surpassed him and became a more important sidekick / side character for Ladybug to bounce off of. Because by virtue of being in on the secret of Ladybug's identity, it opened up a whole new host of story threads and interactions the two could follow through with. And so, it was not looking good for our feline friend. His character had felt like a steady decline over 3 seasons to the point that he no longer mattered, and was honestly kind of cringe. Cat Noir didn't matter to Ladybug, and Adrien didn't seem to matter to the overall story. Until the end of season 4, where his fortunes began to improve because all of Ladybug's allies were ripped away from her, when Felix and Gabe managed to steal all the Miraculouses, which by necessity forces Cat Noir into the limelight. And throughout season 5, it felt like he had everything going for him as both a character in his personality and traits, but also in his role and relevance to the overarching story being told. He becomes less creepy, at long last. He gets to have some romance as he and Marinette set sail. His dynamic with his dad shifts completely and becomes a lot more interesting and nuanced. We get a lot of really interesting story threads from that and their interactions, including Adrian's defiance of his dad's wishes for him to dump Marinette. He shows backbone and strength in his interactions with characters like Chloe and Lila, showing a facet of his character that I felt like had been lost. Adrien also gets a lot of cool moments with Natalie, bonding moments. And it doesn't feel like the story keeps forcing him to be the punching bag for Ladybug to look good. It still happens, but not as much. So there was improvement, and then you go into the finale and there's so many different interesting character beats that are relevant to him specifically going forward. Gabe is Monarch, and also his dad. And he's been doing all of this to revive Emily and restore their family. Natalie's dying. She doesn't have long. She could give him the vital information he needs. Felix is a Senti, and so is Adrian. That information will be key. And their story has been intertwined with one another, building to this massive reveal. Character-wise, so much was set up for Adrian for the finale, and Marinette even has her own stakes in that because she's the Guardian. Therefore, she stays relevant too. It's less personal, but it's still important. Good versus evil, that's ultimately her part in this. But then Adrian loses his backbone, he gets locked up and cries, he gives his miraculous away, which is taken to Marinette, and she is the one who gets all the conclusions. To the Senti twins arc, she's the one Felix confides in, not Adrian. To the Gabe Agreste arc, she's the one who fights Gabe and defeats him at the end and then hides everything from Adrian. He doesn't learn about Gabe, he doesn't learn about Monarch, he doesn't learn about anything, doesn't learn about Emily. Oh, she's the one who talks to Natalie. So for all that build, all the repair they did to his character, and they just piss it away. Oh, it's so annoying. I had forgotten how stupid all of this is. Oh, if I keep going, I'm going to have some sort of palpitation. I'm just getting more upset the more I think about it. How do you fumble something so simple and straightforward right at the end? And Adrian just continues to suck ass. So I'll just remind you, these have all been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours on this whole thing. Do you agree with me that Adrian's character, which was once pretty awesome, hence why he's so popular, was completely butchered throughout seasons 2, 3, and 4, only to be completely ruined at the end of season 5? Or do you somehow disagree with all of these thoughts? You know, let's be honest, fess up. Seriously, I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.